Dawnshard has released, and we got so much information in this novella. I'll go through my quick spoiler-free general thoughts before we dive into spoiler territory and dive deeper into some of the things that I hint at in our spoiler-free section. Dawnshard takes place 3 months after the end of Oathbringer, and just for clarity's sake, Rosharan year is 10 months compared to our 12. Dawnshard is following Risen, a character we have seen time and time again, but she's never really had a lot of screen time. If you'll remember, Risen has that pet Larkin that saved her at the end of Oathbringer. That bird dinosaur kind of thing, small, cute, sucks Stormlight out of stuff, saved her. We love Cheery Cheery. But oh no! Cheery Cheery's sick! And the current best theory of saving her is going to the islands of Amia, specifically Akana, the island lost to legend. As it just turns out, Navani Kolan, now Queen of Uruthiru, also has her eyes on this island, and so Navani agrees to bankroll the whole expedition. She also provides Huio and Lopin as the Windrunner security, Cord, Rock's younger sister, as resident Spren spotter, and Rushu, resident nerd, who is on the ship to do some nerd things, but more importantly, potentially innovate some freedom for Risen. Risen has been struggling with the loss of function of her legs, and while she has found many minor solutions along the way, she finds that it's her lack of autonomy that is the biggest chip on her shoulder still. The Knights might also have some reasons of their own for going out on this adventure, who knows? So off they all pop into the unknown of the islands of Amia. So comparing this novella to others in the Cosmere, I do think that this is possibly the best one so far. Edgedancer to me felt like a bit of an extended interlude, and while Mistborn Secret Histories gave us a whole bunch of cool world building, a lot of answers to questions that we had, the story itself feels a bit disjointed. Dawnshard does what I think Secret Histories tried to do, but is able to be the best of both worlds. Not only is there a ton of Cosmere goodness in here, but we also just have a really strong, enjoyable story to go with it. I think the theming in this book is possibly the strongest that we've seen throughout all of Stormlight, but that might have to do with just how condensed and focused this story is versus the rest of Stormlight, bouncing between everything that's going on. But the vibes of being back on Roshar are all there, baby. Everything just feels right. Whereas while I read Edgedancer, I felt a bit out of place, everything vacuum sealed away. And I think that has a lot to do with Lift not really interacting with other people we're familiar with on Roshar. In this story, we get Risen and the Lopin as our main POVs, characters we're already familiar with. There's a new supporting cast, but we also see showings of Kaladin and Navani, and then Huio and Cord are also familiar characters, even if they haven't been at the forefront before. They're significantly more in the forefront than any characters that we've seen in Edgedancer, even Nail. So this feels more in line with the current story as compared to running parallel to it like Edgedancer did, even if Brandon claims that a lot of what we get in here won't actually push current storylines of Rhythm of War forward too much. Because of the Lopin especially, this book made me laugh so much. There's just something about the way he's written. He can be oh so ridiculous, but I never go tired of him. He never really gets on my nerves. And then out of nowhere, he'll just say something insightful and meaningful, and you just stop and think, did those words just come out of Lopin's mouth? Risen's main struggle here is obviously that now she's an owner of a ship and is constantly going out on voyages and making these trade deals. Her lack of mobility is ever present. We got slight hints of this in Oathbringer, and I'm really glad that we got to focus more in on this so soon after that. I know that Brandon reached out to people who suffer from paraplegia to better understand a lot of their struggles and their emotions, and I think that really shines through here. Final review before the spoilers begin. I love this book. I devoured this book. It's something like 57,000 words, and I sat down one day with the expectation of starting it and then picking it up a little bit later, but then I looked up 2.5 hours later and I was done with the book. It's just such an enthralling experience the whole way through. So if you're planning on reading Rhythm of War, please check out this book first. It's a great appetizer for the full meal that Brandon Sanderson is whipping up for us in the back. He's got that ratatouille ready to go. But now we can take a left right into Spoiler Town. The themes in this book of bridging the divide between cultures and languages and people is beautifully done. There are so many levels that this takes place on, and they are all so good. Risen starts off this story at odds with her crew, and she doesn't quite understand why, though she has some assumptions. But because of this, she is an outsider, not really able to connect with her crew or even the captain of her own ship. Huio, despite being incredibly intelligent, struggles with learning new languages. And while this is fairly minor in comparison to other parts of this story, it's such a rich aspect to just slip in there. Brandon does this in a way that could so easily be overlooked. There isn't really a big show of someone being surprised and humbled by his intelligence. Oftentimes, writers will lean on this kind of scene, but they don't realize that that puts the focus on the character who's having their expectations defied, and not on the character that they actually want to represent. It usually is a really stunted scene too. It kind of stops everything right in its tracks and is separate from the main story. But Huio's intelligence is more obscured from the reader and not from the characters interacting with him. we're dealing with Huio from the point of view of Lopin, his cousin, who already knows and talks about how smart he is. He's not surprised by his intelligence, and so we get a very positive moment out of this as a reader instead of a negative one. Not that there isn't room for talking about addressing these biases from characters, but that's not all that representation should be. And because Brandon went the road less traveled, I loved this. And while we're talking about Huio, I'm getting some major Dustbringer vibes from him throughout this story, and I think that those aspects are setting up for him to become the first of the Radiants that might be bonding with two Spren and be a part of two orders. We know that it's possible, but it's incredibly hard to do, and I couldn't imagine that that's not what Brandon is trying to do here with the actions that Huio takes in this story. Another example of this theme of bridging communication is with Cord and Risen. Cord doesn't speak Alethi well, but speaks Vedant fluently. So this whole time, Risen has been under the assumption that Cord is just maybe the servant girl for the Windrunners, or that she was some mysterious extra that Risen wasn't given information about, that this was secrets being kept from her by Navani. But the moment that Risen realizes that she speaks Vedant, all of that goes away. Cord becomes way more forefront in the story, her dialogue steps up to be way more complicated, and she can communicate efficiently with people. It's such a positive scene. Cord is so excited when she finds that she's able to actually speak one of the better languages of this world, according to her. Nickley, who we find out is an agent of the Sleepless, is a major player, if not the major player, for this theme. First, Risen gives him some advice on how to bridge the gap between him and the rest of the crew, talking about how he should go along with some of their hazing rituals, despite Nickley not really wanting to and thinking that hazing isn't a good idea. And then the lessons that he learns there are applied again later when he has to become more human to agree to the deal that Risen is offering in regards to the Dawnshard. Imperfect solutions for imperfect worlds. This microcosm of proof to lead to the ultimate plot point, I think, is a really well done thing that Brandon talks a lot about when he does his lectures about writing. And to see him then put his words to the page and do it so well is awesome. I describe reading this whole story as a fun Saturday morning breakfast cartoon. It has a super focused core theme that carries throughout all the different threads of the story. The level of wholesome in this is certainly significantly higher than the rest of Stormlight, and it's just a great cast of characters that you have fun watching interact with each other. Lopin and Risen bonding over their handicaps, and Lopin granting some amazing and surprisingly insightful advice to Risen. And then of course there's the conclusion to the Risen crew storyline. Brandon at the beginning of the story sets up a promise, something that he is known to preach about, that he will always fulfill. Risen wants to be able to sail at the beginning of each voyage and then pass the wheel off to her captain, as is tradition for these ships. And by the end, she's able to prove herself to her crew and her captain, and they grow to respect her, and damn it, she sails that ship. There's so many great moments in the story that I can't cover them all. So let's jump into what this novella really was under all this extra whipped cream on top. The massive Cosmere implications and information that we get from this is crazy. We get significantly more understanding of the Sleepless and how they fit into the Stormlight Archive. We learn that on Roshar there are 24 different Sleepless swarms, 20 of which all are following this one goal, 3 of which are against them. And then there's Arklow from Edge Dancer, who isn't against the original 20 swarms, but they don't really like him directly interacting with the Radiants like he's doing, and he doesn't necessarily agree with the way that they're going about things either. We also see that the Sleepless are able to breed different types of drones for their swarms. We get the great shells that attack the beaches, and the Larkin-style Sleepless that are able to suck out Stormlight from Lopin. We get a significant advancement in Fabrial tech, I think, here. Huio, while messing around with one of the Fabrials, puts some aluminum into the Fabrial and accidentally breaks it. But by breaking it, he actually locks one of the axes of movement on the Ruby. They're able to use this core concept to then create a floating platform that Risen is able to control without actually affecting the other Ruby. This lets Risen get around the ship way easier, but more importantly, this has crazy implications for the future. Assuming Navani Colon already knows about this the moment that they sent her that span read, and she's been working on it, I expect we're gonna see a flying ship very soon. Lopin also claims that inhaling Stormlight from different types of gems have different flavors, and while this is kind of a minor offhanded statement, I don't think we should sleep on this one. There is also another very minor thing, and I'm not sure if it's a plot hole or if it's a secret left by Brandon, but when Risen and Cord are under the island and they find the Soulcasters and that shard plate and the mural with the Dawnshard in it, Cord wants to activate the shard plate with a whole bunch of raw gems, but she doesn't have enough, so she goes deeper into the cave to find more, and she's able to find raw gems with Stormlight in them? These are either perfect gems and they hold this Stormlight forever, or there's something else going on here, because those gems should have lost their Stormlight a long time ago. These are gifts that were left here a while ago because the Sleepless don't want them. They're just respecting the Guardians of Akana. I think something's going on there, but I'm not totally sure what. Finally, the biggest Cosmere implications we get from this are, of course, the titular Dawnshard. With the art on the walls, we see a sun split into 4, and then the 4 split into 4 more each, creating 16 shards. These are, of course, the shards spread around the Cosmere, Honor, Odium, and Cultivation being the 3 that are on Roshar. We don't get a whole lot of information here, and Brandon hit us with a hard Rapho stick, like, right after this book when we begged him for more information, so we're not going to get much else till much later, I think. But what we do know is that both Nickley and Risen refer to the Dawnshard as a capital C command. According to Nickley, the most powerful types of surge binding require both intent and command. And the Dawnshard has the potential to do this at a level only available to deities. And then later Brandon did confirm that when Nickley says surge binding here, it can be expanded to other magics of the Cosmere. They're just on Roshar. And we know that while Risen can't use the Dawnshard, she does have some heightening effects from taking it into her soul or whatever happens there. These heightening effects are from Nalthis, of course, from in the book Warbreaker. We know she's at least at the 3rd heightening because in the prologue she sees more vibrant colors than she's used to. She might potentially be able to use the Dawnshard if she's bonding with a Spren. We can only assume that because Nickley makes it very specific in their deal that she cannot bond with a Spren. We know that the Dawnshard in conjunction with Surge Binding is what caused the cataclysm on Ashen. We know that taking in a Dawnshard to your soul can leave lasting effects even if you're able to get rid of it. Hoyd once had a Dawnshard, and people that used to have Dawnshards are known as Dawn Slivers. And as a direct result of having that Dawnshard, Hoyd is no longer able to bring harm to other people, himself. He can't even eat meat, so something very deep in his soul changed when he took on that Dawnshard. The last big confirmed piece of information we have is that 3 out of the 4 Dawnshards are similar in the way that they work, and the last one is different from the rest. In what way? Who knows? So now we've gone through spoiler territory. Let's flip a Yui and go right into Theory Town. After conversing with a lot of people extensively about the Dawnshard since I finished this book, I've come to the conclusion that it's really hard to hammer down anything past what we really know. There's just so much up in the air, with not much backing any given theory. But the theories that I'm currently subscribed to are that the Dawnshards acted more like a poison than a big weapon against Adalnauseam. It potentially could have split some aspect of his being into 4, but it didn't outwardly destroy him. And then those 4 splits of aspect, since the cracks were kind of already there and he was weakened, not all unified, the intents of those 4 pieces began to pull away from each other, shattering him completely. Perhaps the second shattering was immediately caused by shardic intent, and because the shards were not unified wholly, they then had enough power to be able to split away from 4 instead of being able to split away from the whole 16 together. Not a super strong theory, but I really like it. I think that any kind of really epic battle against Adalnauseam doesn't totally make any sense if he's the all-powerful being. Something more furtive and secret and roguish makes way more sense to me, and so them being used as a poison to then cause some natural effect to take place just feels right. The other theory that I'm all in on is that one of the Dawnshards had to have been used when they made Nightblood. He's just so weird and funky. We think that the commands that these Dawnshards are might be singular words, so the command that Risen might have is change. We don't have real confirmation on that, but that's what a lot of the community is rolling with. Perhaps Nightblood was hit with the Dawnshard for destroy or something like that. Who knows? Brandon Sanderson said, hey everyone, hey all you people, Christmas came early this year. He hit us with so much goodness in this book. We got Huio and Lopin swearing their 3rd oaths, Risen gaining some freedom along with a boatload of power and responsibility. Cord got some shard plate as a potential promise that we'll see her as a more forefront character in Rhythm of War, or perhaps a little bit later along in the storylines. And he built up significantly more hype than I thought could be built up for Rhythm of War, and I cannot wait until we get to read it. Those are my thoughts on Dawnshard. If you found anything here interesting or liked what I had to say, please hit that like button. If you haven't, hit that subscribe button even, and comment below and tell me some of your theories about Dawnshard. Everyone's got a theory and everyone can be right now because we have nothing to go on. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great day and stay lit.